My name is Ms. Such. I am the theater arts teacher at DeSoto East Middle School. I began my education in Philadelphia, where I went to my undergraduate at the University of the Arts, and then I continued pursuing my master's at the Actors Studio Drama School in New York at Pace University. And then I began teaching, starting with playwriting, and last year was my first foray into the public school system. So I've been going from teaching adults and children in juvenile detention halls in Pennsylvania how to write plays, to teaching the wonderful kids at DeSoto East Middle School how to appreciate and create theater. Let's see, why do I think art is an important part of a child's education? A vast majority of students, especially in today's life, spend most of their time and creativity on YouTube, watching YouTube programs, watching television, playing video games. And unfortunately, that actually hinders their imagination because things are being created for them. So what the arts do is the arts give them the platform to utilize their imagination, get outside of what is created for them, and make them create their own things, whether that is music, art, theater, or dance. It's incredibly important. It's also important for students who are not either athletically inclined or academically inclined. It's important for them to know that they do have a place in this world and they do have abilities that they may not think that they have in other departments. Art is also a great way in history and in literature, a great way for students to tackle their core subjects, history and literature, ELAR. It's important for them to find that in other classes, elective classes, they can learn about those same subjects and maybe understand things in their elective classes that they can't understand in their core classes. And seeing that things like math in my and the music classes, and as well as literature and history, span throughout all academic regions, not just their core classes, but also their electives. Let's see, how do you connect your activities in the art room into lessons taught within other subject areas? I love this question. So yesterday, Mr. Walker and Mr. Walker is the choir director, I sat in for an informal observation of his class. And he was teaching his students how to have tall vowels, as he puts it, which is forming open sounds with your mouth. It's the same concept that we teach in theater arts, making sure that your sound is open, that you are enunciating all of your vowels and pronunciating all of your consonants, making sure that your words are hearable, legible, everything like that. And the reason it's important is because if people can't understand what you're saying, or in his case singing, what is the point of even performing? So after hearing his students and their lack of tall vowels, I went up to Mr. Walker and I said, I think it's time I start teaching the 6th graders IPA. IPA stands for the International Phonetic Alphabet. I've been teaching my 7th graders, but I realized that he could really utilize it in his classes. I also make sure that I talk to the students about what they're learning about in their English courses. And in my class, we cover Greek theater, so we cover Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, and sometimes we even move on to Shakespeare, depending on how the information is grasped. So it's very important and I think very useful that I'm able to figure out where the students are in their English and reading classes, and then they get the opportunity to not only read out loud, but work on their pronunciation. They have to look up words, especially with Shakespeare and the Greeks, they have to look up words that they've never even heard before. They have to figure out what hamartia is and hubris. And because of that, they're constantly going to the dictionary. They're not allowed to use electronics in my classroom. And they're constantly trying to figure out what it is that they are reading. So it's helping with their comprehension cross-curricular. It also helps when we learn the historical aspect behind the play we're reading or behind the theater that we're studying. So they can connect whatever they're learning in history class with whatever we're reading and figure out, oh, right, I learned about that in history. So that applies to this, which is why we act it this way, which is why we say it this way, which is why we use this dialect, this accent, things of that nature. My students are currently working on their Veterans Day program, but my sixth graders wrote and acted in their own plays just a couple of weeks ago. And what they did was they took 3 Greek myths, the Golden Apple, Orpheus and Eurydice, and what was the third one? Oh, Pandora's Box. And they adapted them into their own plays, and they wrote them together as a group. And we performed them in my classroom. We invited all the parents, and they helped me create the posters. We went on to perform one of the plays for the book fair organized by Ms. Frazier with East and West Middle School, and they performed it for the community. We're moving on in that. From that performance, we filmed the productions in class. I'm in the process of editing them, and then as soon as I have permissions, we'll post them to the website, and that way it will be available to all members of the community. And it will just showcase how the students can create their own work and act in their own work and really create a cross-cultural adaptation of famous myths from their own flair. Some of the art projects my students have loved that could be integrated into our core classrooms. My students love creating costumes more than anything, I think. That's probably the most successful. So what I did one day for a classroom assignment was I had them take their favorite character in any literature that they read in their ELA art class or on their own, any character. And they had to create 3 separate costume designs for those characters. And what it did was it helped them create the personality and realize the artistic, because as I discussed with them in their artistic choices, we couldn't do anything like Harry Potter because that's already been filmed, but we did, what was one of the plays we've read? Oh, The Giver. And that was a very fun book to adapt because it's one of those dystopian novels. So we had to ask, okay, why do the students dress the way they do? What does it look like if we're doing it from the perception of the main character, who at first sees in black and white, and then it changes to color once his gift develops? So they were creating character costumes that were in black and white and then in color, finding out why some characters dressed this way and why some characters dressed that way. So I think moving forward in the drawing realm is a great way for students to understand and comprehend what they are reading and what they are learning about. The same thing with the historical aspect. Last year we watched Jesus Christ Superstar, and groups of students had to create conceptual designs, both set, costumes, and an idea. And so they took the main elements of Jesus Christ Superstar. It takes place in Jerusalem, an occupied country by the Romans, and it has Jesus of Nazareth and his followers and the Romans. So they had to find a historical time and place, a historical setting that matched with that time. So we had students who chose to set their plays in Darfur during the Darfurian genocide. We had students who decided to place the characters in Nazi Germany. Some students decided to do a post-apocalyptic Second Coming. Some students decided to do the Civil War, the South during the Civil War. My fine arts team is the best team I could ever ask for. We all work together, we help each other out, and we discuss with each other, because a lot of us share students, where they are falling behind, where they are moving forward, and then we can help address it in each of our classrooms, just like Mr. Walker and I do, Mr. Johnson and I do, and sometimes I'm able to do with Mr. Addix, the band teacher. My students, their biggest fear predominantly is math, and you might think that it's not possible to integrate math and theater, but the great thing is that producers of theater handle math all the time because they're constantly handling budgets. So when I can give a student the imaginary budget of, say, $500,000 to $1 million, and then say, now you have to make sure that you pay each actor per night this much money. You have to abide by this many codes. This person has to make as much as this person. And I give them all these guidelines. All of a sudden they're doing math. They're not just doling out money. They say, well, if we do 12 performances and we have 5 actors, that's 60. And then they end up doing algebra without even realizing it. So I think all core subjects can really be integrated into theater or any type of art form without even really trying. Students who are not necessarily artistically gifted, the best thing for them is to find something that they are good at. Even if it's bossing people around, that's when I say, hey, you'd make a great stage manager or you'd make a great director. People listen to you and you are very good at gathering people and getting them to do what they need to do. As a word of general advice and encouragement, I would tell a new teacher or even a teacher who's been doing this for 30 years, patience is a virtue. And we tell our students all the time, don't shoot yourself in the foot. And we have to make sure we do that for ourselves as well. We have to make sure that we recognize how hard it is to be a kid in today's society. And then breathe. And then take away all of those distractions in the classroom and let a kid be the kids that we were. And nurture them and allow them to be those children.